great patriots of Act 746. Now, they have a Facebook page. You can check them out. It's a closed group, so you have to request membership, but they're 12,000 strong. They're on a mission to educate folks on the constitutional carry, the Second Amendment gun rights that we have here in Arkansas, and that Act 746 decriminalizes the possession of a firearm here in the state, increases the burden of proof of possession of a weapon. It's a fantastic situation. We just got to stop these lawmakers from trying to mess with it. Here to talk a little bit more about that, we have first time on the program, Mr. Felix Normand is joining us on the phone, as well as friend of the program. We've got Tim Loggins back with us, both on the phone. Hello, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
Hello, Paul. How you doing?
All right. Yeah, I'm doing good. So the reason I wanted to have you guys on is because Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, has recently delivered an opinion. She responded to an opinion, and it had to do with enhanced carry. Now, we all know, we've covered extensively on this program, that the enhanced carry bill was garbage, is garbage. And I like to use that phrase because the entire thing was a really a mockery of the system. Politics got involved. People bent over backwards to try to protect Asa Hutchinson from having to veto a bill which would have exposed him as being anti-Second Amendment, which I think he is because he calls it a privilege and not a right. But specifically, now we know that this law, even the good things, or if you could even argue that there were good things that it was going to do, the Attorney General is now saying that public facilities that serve alcohol can now ban guns. And so I want to start with Mr. Felix Normand. Felix, what can you tell us about this opinion, and how do you interpret it?
Well, I'm going to say that she's replying to a letter from Senator Bill Sample out of Hot Springs of two questions he asked her specifically about banning whether you could ban alcohol from a public facility that's serving it, because we all know a public facility is really a government facility that's serving alcohol. The enhanced was supposed to allow you to go into a public facility, but now they're saying you can ban somebody if you're selling alcohol there. So it makes the enhanced useless in that respect.
Okay, so in that respect, you're saying it's useless. So, where tell us about where do you disagree with the opinion, Felix? I mean, you obviously. Let me ask you this, Felix. First time on the show, what do you think in general of what the enhanced carry law was or is?
Well, I got an article right here from back in March when it was first signed by the governor. This is the governor signed sweeping gun rights measures into law on Wednesday that will allow concealed handguns at state colleges, some bars, government buildings, and even the state capitol. This is right from the news article from the AP. But yet, we see as it goes on, they're slowly restricting the places they said the enhanced carry was supposed to allow us to go into to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Tim.
Also, when they talk about alcohol sales, when you hear it discussed as a topic, they almost always use the term alcohol sales, but they don't specify the difference between alcohol sales in a bar versus alcohol sales in a restaurant. They kind of cut that off to make it sound like all alcohol sales places are forbidden for handguns to be.
So, Tim, what's your take on this this new development? Tim, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. What's your take on this new development, Tim Loggins?
It just kind of confirms everything the Patriots have been saying, for a year now. Enhanced is garbage. This opinion by the AG says public and private and the carry of a weapon was just a simple sign.
Hey Tim. Hey, can you get to a better location, maybe where we get a better signal, or maybe kind of move around because we're kind of losing you right there. That'd be good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. This just confirms everything we've been saying all along. It's garbage. Remember, this was a campus carry bill when it started, and
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. My name is Paul Harrell, and this is Conduit News Radio. We are building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that liberty machine. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. So the news, I guess, for yesterday is that the governor had a press conference around 3 p.m. where he laid out the potential call for a special session. Technically, it's called an extraordinary session. Now we just call them special sessions. And, of course, yesterday we exposed this, what I think is a ruse. I think it's a way to delegitimize, to strip of power the Arkansas General Assembly, specifically the individual members who are not in leadership, when the Speaker of the House and Jeremy Gillum, the President pro temp of the Senate, sends a letter to Asa urging him to call a special session, but only if they can get two-thirds majority vote for the proposed language in the bills. It's all very confusing because they're trying to rig the game. They don't want legitimate debate. He doesn't want to call a special session until everybody agrees, two-thirds agree that this language is good. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, number one, and Asa said this, and we'll get to it. We have the audio. Asa said the reason, and honestly, this is what I think happened. Asa calls up Jeremy and calls up Jonathan Dismang and says, hey, this is my idea. You guys need to write me a letter. So they write him a letter. Fast forward to the press conference where Asa is praising the fact that they're wise enough to send him a letter. And this is what happened yesterday. But why would you do that? Why would you require and create these extra constitutional requirements in order to do a special session? Asa said it's because he doesn't want negative media attention. Yesterday, he said that the reason we have to have this pre-vote or a like a snapshot of the way it looks going in is because he doesn't want to be facing the media and them asking him, well, why didn't you get your agenda passed, Governor? Well, now, this is something he hasn't been afraid of before. I mean, they've had no problem in the past getting predetermined results in special sessions. So why now? Why is it all of a sudden now that Asa is worried about not getting his agenda passed? Could it be the fact that he has a primary opponent coming up in May and Jan Morgan? I think so. I think that's one consideration that is obvious here that you have to take into account. That is the obvious reason. Well, what's another reason? Well, it could be that the General Assembly, quite frankly, is getting tired of getting pushed around. It also could be the CVS angle. And Asa wants them to all agree to the language in a bill before they actually get to debate the bill and have the constitutional authority to put amendments on it. Now, think about it. If in fact the governor is siding with CVS, even though I know, because I talked to pharmacists yesterday, even though I know they said, well, he sounds like he's on the side of pharmacists now. Well, you got to listen to what he says. He says he supports the regulatory authority of the insurance department with PBMs, that he supports that. But what does that mean specifically? You have Senator Ron Caldwell. He has a bill, okay? and I'm told that the governor doesn't support that bill, right? So you already have some language. So apparently there is something. And so if you get everybody to agree to the language, and then the fix is in, then there is no debate. There are no amendments. There is no actual legislating, because they are trying to legislate behind closed doors. They're trying, and we don't even know what the language is, but when they get the language, they want to make sure that this is what is passed. They're not going to allow the process to play out when the legislature actually has constitutional power, and that happens after he makes the call. The governor determines what the call is. It would be PBMs and pharmacies. And in that context, the legislature can then craft whatever they want to craft. The governor is actually doing the opposite here. He is trying, along with the leadership, and I just want to say something about Speaker Gillum and President of the Pro Temp, Jonathan Dismang. You guys have no respect for the Arkansas Constitution and no respect for the separation of powers between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And it's really a shame. It's a shame that you guys are actually acting in bad faith when you look at what the spirit of three and separate equal branches of government are supposed to be. 2/3. We need 2/3 to sign on to the bill before the governor will call a special session, because the governor is, well, I mean, they're not coming out and saying this, but we now know because of what he said yesterday, because, well, the governor's worried that he's not going to get what he wants. 2 reasons. He looks bad, and number 2, he's trying to manage this issue. He says it's a real issue. But if you listen to him read between the lines, he's very careful here to stand up for PBMs. And he says, well, you know, PBMs aren't all bad. And the thing is, 20 years ago, that was true. But at this point, we have a serious issue. And so he's I don't know. I thought he was walking a tightrope just like he always does yesterday. Matter of fact, somebody just wrote on Facebook, this same applies to the enhanced carry garbage. Yeah, I mean, it's every single issue. Every single issue is controlled and managed, and we are afraid, and this is because we have a legislature that, left to their own devices, left to freedom, left to independence, will be way more conservative than this governor. If it wasn't for Speaker Gillum and Jonathan Dismang and the leadership, okay, this legislature would be pumping out pieces of legislation that I can be a fan of. I promise you that. But that's not happening because the governor really, I mean, if you think about it, these guys are betraying their responsibility as their constitutional authority as the House of Representatives and the Arkansas Senate. You guys are supposed to stand up not for the Republican Party per se. You're not supposed to stand up for the Republican Party or the R over your constitutional powers. And yet you guys are playing ball all for politics, all for political reasons. Anyway, of course, we know their brand of republicanism is not actually, well, you used to could say platform Republicans, but then they went and changed the platform and took limited government out of it. That was to their benefit. I mean, who else's benefit would it be? It's the non-platform Republicans now can say, well, no, I'm a platform Republican again. Unbelievable. Joe, let's cue up cut number 1. Governor Asa Hutchinson's press conference yesterday, 3 o'clock, on this special session or potential special session. This is what he said.
If there is a consensus, do you feel there's a consensus right now for
Stop.
to be able to move forward?
The reason you got a reporter here saying, is there a consensus? Because that's what he said. There's got to be a consensus before we have the special session. I put, this is kind of a lengthy clip. I pulled it because he essentially gives the same answer twice, because there's a follow-up question after this. Listen.
I believe that there is a consensus for oversight responsibility going to the Department of Insurance over pharmacy benefit managers.
Yeah, what does that look like, though?
So there is a consensus in my judgment, and I think that's the same as what Speaker Gillum and President Dismang were saying. But we still have to develop the language of the specific legislation, and that's up to the legislative body to do that and to arrive at a consensus for it.
Without seeing the specifics of such a bill, do you support
Stop. Without seeing the specifics of the bill, do you support putting PBMs under the regulatory authority of the Department of Insurance? Go.
I support giving the insurance department oversight, and that needs to be fleshed out in terms of the language.
What about Ron Caldwell's bill?
It's my understanding that no state has really put PBMs under a regulatory authority yet. I know a number of states that are considering it, but I'm not aware of any other states. And so this is, a bridge to give the insurance department oversight, but at the same time recognize that these are private commercial contracts, and we have a public interest because this involves Medicaid funds in some part, as well as commercial contracts, and the consumers are at issue here. But there has to be a balance in terms of the regulatory authority and
like
restrictions on that within the insurance department. But I do support giving oversight authority.
All right, stop for a second. So he said, now he did admit what we had Mr. Brandon Cooper on the program yesterday, pharmacist. And what he had to say, this is the former head of the Arkansas Pharmacy Association, he had to say that Arkansas Works is a big problem here. I mean, it's a big problem with these PBMs. And the reason being is because Arkansas Works takes your taxpayer dollars and gives it to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Blue Cross Blue Shield and these PBMs and CVS and they're all connected, and it's all of this undercutting of your local pharmacist. And so now the issue becomes you have your taxpayer dollars. If you're a pharmacist and you're in the pharmacy community, because of Arkansas Works, you have your taxpayer dollars going directly to the insurance companies who are in the middle of all of this. And they're participating at a level that, again, is undercutting the pharmacies. And so it's the equivalent, really, of Asa Hutchinson's version of economic development, which is take the taxpayer dollars of an existing Arkansas business and give them to a Chinese company so that the Chinese company can move to Arkansas and then recruit or hire away your employees when we are in the middle of a skilled labor shortage or crisis in this state. It's actually the exact same thing when your own tax dollars are being used to participate in a scheme against you. But we gotta find a balance, he says. Keep going. Or go to the next cut, Joe. Are we queued up for the next one? Keep going.
Carriers feel that one reason why they need to use PBM to negotiate this pricing model is that they worry that they won't stay underneath the budgetary cap set for Arkansas Works. So could you speak to that? How do you, is that a valid concern for carriers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because I have put pressure on the carriers to control their costs and to keep underneath the caps. And they've responded to that, and it's not just a pharmacy issue, but they have reduced costs in other areas, and they have utilized PBMs. And you think about pharmacy benefit managers is utilized by some of the major corporations in Arkansas, and they're managed very well. It's a benefit, it's a cost savings for their members and their employees, and so we have to recognize that there's not something inherent that PBM should be abolished.
So it's all going to come down to what is the carefully crafted language in the actual bill. Will the bill actually address the problems and concerns of the pharmacist, of the pharmacy, what's going on to the local pharmacy? Will it actually address the concerns or the real examples that are out there of a $12 prescription reimbursement of $12 for the local pharmacy, but $100 or more, and sometimes greatly more for CVS? Will that actually be accomplished in this? I would just, a word of caution to the pharmacists out there who watched that press conference yesterday and celebrated it because you thought Asa was on your side. A word of caution to you because, this is Governor Asa Hutchinson we're talking about. I've been covering him for a long time now, and this is you always have to watch what the other hand is doing. Listen to cut number 2 now, Joe. I want to go to cut number 2. Oh, that was cut number 2? Go to cut number 3 then, please. Folks, the telephone number 870-275-9799. Okay, next, go.
Before we go into any special session.
Why not take up the PBM issue as a non-appropriation bill instead of calling special session?
Okay, so stop. Why take up this issue in a special when you could just do it in a fiscal? Listen.
And in both houses, and so it's just easier if it's done in a special session, and I think it is more consistent with the historic view of that constitutional amendment that provides the fiscal session is for budget matters. Obviously, it provides that there can
the
be
historical view.
Both houses to introduce a non-fiscal matter.
Looks like someone read Conduit for Action yesterday.
And I think the leadership agrees that if you're going to have those items, to have it addressed in a special
Stop.
session.
I mean, no, let me just tell you what's going on here. They're trying to limit the constitutional authority of the legislature, right? Because if right now, if the leadership were to allow a 2/3 vote to see if they can consider this pharmacy bill or that pharmacy bill, it's as far as Ace is concerned, it's the wild, wild west. Anything could happen, and it's outside of his control, okay? But if you have now the speaker and the president pro temp saying, no, we're going to do this in a special session, but we need you guys we need a pre-whip count. We need 2/3 of you to sign on. We need to already agree to the language. It's like you guys have the constitutional authority theoretically right now to do whatever you want to do in a fiscal session. You just got to have 2/3 support. I know it's a high bar, but you see what I'm saying here? This is all about manipulation and control. Now, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to play for you the part of this audio that is actually shocking to me, and that's where Asa says the reason that they came up with this whole scheme to get a 2/3 signature before a special session can be called is because he doesn't want to have to take difficult questions from the media and look bad. Back in a minute. In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so why, again, trying to get to the bottom, and Conduit for Action did a great job of this, their piece over at conduitforaction.org, what happened to representative democracy in Arkansas. That really explains this David Ferguson piece about this letter that was sent. These two letters that were identical that were sent to the governor. And I'm telling you, what I think happened was the governor called Jeremy Gillum and Jonathan Dismang and said, hey, you guys need to write me a letter, and then I'm going to have a press conference, and I'm going to talk about how wise you guys were to write me a letter telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. Here's cut number 5, Joe. Yeah, go to cut number 5, because this is the question is, so why do you need 2/3 support to sign on and agree to the language before you will agree to call a special session, Governor?
I think the letters that the legislative leader sent to you, they said they wanted signatures of 2/3 of the members. Do you expect that to be 2/3 of city members or total members?
As to what goes on the call is the prerogative and responsibility of the governor.
Duh.
But I do appreciate the wisdom of the legislative leadership, and whenever it takes a 2/3 vote of both houses to put a policy matter on a physical session, I think they're reasonable in saying that's an appropriate threshold for a special session. And the reason being, you want to make sure that you don't have a one-vote margin going into a special session, and all of a sudden somebody decides to change their mind, and I'm sitting here in front of you saying, why did you all call a special session when you didn't have the votes in line? So you have to have a margin there, and I think they had a lot of wisdom in saying that having the same threshold as it would be in a physical session.
Stop. So that is clear, and that was like the last question that he addressed in his press conference yesterday. Governor Asa Hutchinson just told you this whole scheme between the Speaker of the House that is trying to control and really control and push back against a conservative agenda, just like the Speaker or this President Pro Temp of the Senate, Jonathan Dismang, is trying to push back against a real conservative agenda, all to protect Asa. The governor's office is trying to manipulate and control the outcomes of a representative democracy in the General Assembly, and you do this by. And it's all because he's got a primary opponent, okay, Jan Morgan, and it also has to do with the fact that he said it. He doesn't want negative publicity. You heard him. He says, and you guys ask me, why did you call a special session when you can't get it? We don't need to go in with a 51-vote majority. I've got an idea, Governor. Why don't we let the legislature legislate? Let's not be afraid of the process. If there's a real issue with the pharmacists and the PBMs, why not have a robust debate? Let's have amendments. Let's have up or down votes on them. and let the people's representatives solve the problem.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It's brought to you by the great Patriots of Act 746. Now, they have a Facebook page. You can check them out. It's a closed group, so you have to request membership, but they're 12,000 strong. They're on a mission to educate folks on the constitutional carry, the Second Amendment gun rights that we have here in Arkansas, and that Act 746 decriminalizes the possession of a firearm here in the state, increases the burden of proof of possession of a weapon. It's a fantastic situation. We just got to stop these lawmakers from trying to mess with it. Here to talk a little bit more about that, we have first time on the program, Mr. Felix Normand is joining us on the phone, as well as friend of the program. We've got Tim Loggins back with us, both on the phone. Hello, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
Hello, Paul. How you doing?
All right. Yeah, I'm doing good. So the reason I want to have you guys on is because Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, has recently delivered an opinion. She responded to an opinion, and it had to do with enhanced carry. Now, we all know, we've covered extensively on this program, that the enhanced carry bill was garbage, is garbage. And I like to use that phrase because the entire thing was a really a mockery of the system. Politics got involved. People bent over backwards to try to protect Asa Hutchinson from having to veto a bill which would have exposed him as being anti-Second Amendment, which I think he is because he calls it a privilege and not a right. But specifically, now we know that this law, even the good things, or if you could even argue that there were good things that it was going to do, the Attorney General is now saying that public facilities that serve alcohol can now ban guns. And so I want to start with Mr. Felix Normand. Felix, what can you tell us about this opinion, and how do you interpret it?
Well, first I'm going to say that she was replying to a letter from Senator Bill Sample out of Hot Springs of two questions he asked her specifically about banning whether you could ban alcohol from a public facility that's serving it, because we all know a public facility is really a government facility that's serving alcohol. The enhanced was supposed to allow you to go into a public facility, but now they're saying you can ban somebody if you're selling alcohol there. So it makes the enhanced useless in that respect.
Okay, so in that respect, you're saying it's useless. So, where tell us about where do you disagree with the opinion, Felix? I mean, you obviously. Let me ask you this, Felix. First time on the show, what do you think in general of what the enhanced carry law was or is?
Well,
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're going to be coming up at 7:05. We'll be talking with the Republican Party chairman of Independence County, Charles Fuqua, will be on the program. They have a Trump Day dinner coming up that is exploded in popularity. And I'm also told, to the dismay of establishment Republicans, by the way, in Arkansas, they're not huge fans of this. I understand Jan Morgan will be the keynote speaker there. So Charles is going to come on and talk about that. And we also have, I guess at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to be talking 7:33 with a Russellville pharmacist about the very issues, PBMs and everything else. Russellville pharmacist Mr. Michael Smith will be joining us at the bottom of the hour today. The bottom of the next hour, rather, because we're at the bottom of the hour right now. And I just want to remind everybody, this part of the program is brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce, they are putting Arkansas small business first, and you should check out more about the policies they advocate, and you can do all that at conduitforcommerce.org. Conduit for Commerce is doing the job that the Chamber of Commerce used to do, in my opinion, and so check them out, conduitforcommerce.org. All right. So what's interesting here is that Max Brantley, over at the Arkansas Times. Now, this is interesting. Max Brantley over at the Arkansas Times actually mentioned the Conduit for Action article about with David Ferguson. Let me just say this about Mr. David Ferguson, who is the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, worked for the Bureau for 33 years. This man his name still commands a lot of respect down at the Marble Palace from legislators because they know he knows what he's talking about. So when David Ferguson writes this article over at Conduit for Action about what happened to representative democracy in Arkansas and outlines the fact that Jeremy Gillum and Jonathan Dismang are trying to put extra constitutional restrictions on the legislature, and they have zero authority to do so. This letter, I know there are members of the General Assembly that disagree with me, but I know you would agree that the power of the legislature and the legislative body itself should be respected, and it shouldn't be reduced down to 3 people, especially when one of those individuals is not a member of the legislature, Asa Hutchinson. 3 people should not get to decide whether or not you guys are going to have a hearing to maybe address this PBM issue in the fiscal session with getting the threshold you need, or whether or not you got to sign your name, sign on to a piece of legislation that the governor supports until he'll call a special session. Well, the fact is, you don't have to have a special session. You can do all of this right now, but you cannot be lapdogs. You cannot be a lapdog legislature to Asa Hutchinson. You have to be, you guys got to be lions. You guys got to be lions. What was it? There's a book written. There's a book written that argues that The Wizard of Oz was an allegory about economics. You had the Scarecrow, which was supposed to represent agriculture and farming. You have the Tin Man that was supposedly supposed to represent like industry and industrialization, that sort of thing. But you had the Cowardly Lion, okay? And the Cowardly Lion, according to this, at the time that The Wizard of Oz was written, the Cowardly Lion was supposed to represent Congress. And it was because, well, isn't it? It's so ironic, right? It doesn't go together. You have a lion, but he's a coward. And that's what this allegory was about. It was the fact that you have this lion that has all the power and authority they need, but they're afraid to actually use it. That is your situation right now, Little Rock, Arkansas, General Assembly. You guys are representing, you guys have been invested with power by the people who sent you there. And the governor has nothing to do with that. Asa Hutchinson has nothing to do with the power your constituents vested in you. Nothing to do with it. So don't be a lapdog. Be the lion, but not a cowardly one. It's actually fascinating. If you ever look into this, it's a fascinating allegory because in the actual book Wizard of Oz, they weren't ruby slippers, they were silver slippers, okay? That's a precious metal, as is the yellow brick road, which is gold. And it was kind of about, if you listen to what the way people will interpret this, they're talking about the value of gold and silver and precious metals. So there's obviously like a monetary policy angle in that interpretation as well. But anyway, yeah, and so you can see that, right? Like, so you got the lion, cowardly, Congress, all the power, but they're afraid to use it. You have the Tin Man, right? Industrialist, but he doesn't have a heart. You see that? And then then this is, you have farmers in this. Farmers didn't have a brain. Like, that's what they were. It was like a snapshot of what was going on in America right now, or back then, when The Wizard of Oz was written. I'm just telling you, I think we can glean something from this today in our own present situation. What kind of government do we want to have, folks? What kind of government do we want to have? The Democrat Party, legislatively, was in control of this state for 138 years. And I, for one, am beginning to think I don't see much difference except for the letter change, R to D. But I'm starting to think that it may be worse. And if I'm honest about it, I'm starting to think it may be worse because now there is a clear agenda against limited government conservatives, specifically limited government policies. There's a clear agenda against that. And right now you just see it in trying to control what the legislature can vote on and propose. It's protectionist. It's trying to protect the status quo, and the only way and the links that they will go to. So throw this Max Brantley article up real quick. This is from the Arkansas Times. Max Brantley. Government holiday includes Hutchinson News Conference. Oh yeah, yesterday was President's Day. I found that out afterwards because a lot of things were closed. Scrolling down here, we eventually get to this part where David Ferguson is mentioned. Keep going. Let's get to that. Here we go. Max Brantley writes, speaking of which, a former lawyer for the legislature, David Ferguson, has outlined this procedure in an essay posted by Conduit for Action, the conservative interest group that would like to kill the Medicaid expansion entirely, and which is working to win Senate seats to prevent the 3/4 vote necessary to approve appropriation bills. Brantley goes on, Ferguson sees the efforts of House Speaker Jeremy Gillum and Senate President Pro Tem Jonathan Dismang to work out a special session agenda in advance with early filing of legislation supported by 2/3 of members as an assault on representative democracy. He sees their suggestions for preparing for an expeditious special session as an end run around rules of the House, or rules of the houses. It's political maneuvering, no doubt. So we have Max Brantley here agreeing with David Ferguson. But as Ferguson himself notes, all he needs is 67 representatives and 24 senators to agree with him on a different course of action. It's called representative democracy. The noise suggests he doesn't have them. Ferguson is right about the power that has come to be vested in chamber leadership, particularly the House with the Speaker's control of committees. But that was a product of a vote, too. Yeah, they voted to do it. It's like suicide, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right, Joe. So this is up over the Arkansas Times, but go to the original article. I would urge you to do that and read this thing because David Ferguson destroys the narrative of Jeremy Gillum, Jonathan Dismang, and Asa Hutchinson because he knows what the law says and he knows what these rules are are in place for, and how these guys are. It's just utter nonsense. I mean, listen to this. Misrepresenting the Arkansas Constitution, Dismang and Gillum wrote this. It is our desire to maintain the integrity and voter intent of this fiscal session by focusing strictly on appropriation bills and the budgetary matters of the state. Ferguson writes, their assertion about the intent of false sessions or fiscal sessions is false. It seems inconceivable that a Speaker of the House and the President pro tem would not know what the people said through the Arkansas Constitution, which specifically allows, ladies and gentlemen, for you to hear other bills in a fiscal session. The letters of Gillum and Dismang, scrolling down, continue by putting a huge stumbling block in front of legislators who want to exercise their right to submit legislation in a special session called by the governor. They each say, quote, in order to expedite a potential extraordinary session, we are requesting that members seeking to introduce a bill in an extraordinary session provide a final bill draft for review by Monday, February 26th. We are also requesting that bill drafts be accompanied by signatures of 2/3 of the members of each chamber demonstrating support for these policy changes prior to the issue being placed on the call of an extraordinary session. Do you see how they're trying to basically Johnny sweep the legs out of the authority of an individual legislator? I mean, these tactics, folks, are, they're completely, they're anti-republic. They're anti-republic. They're anti-democracy. But they're trying to take the power away from people being able to file bills they want to file. The links that they will go to control the policies enacted in this state, they are scared. Why is Asa Hutchinson scared of a representative democracy? Why the real question is, leaving him out of it, why is Jeremy Gillum scared of his body just being allowed and have the freedom to represent their folks? And why is Dismang scared? Why are you guys scared of that? First, listen to this. A bill draft deadline. You got to have your bills into us by February 26th. First, David Ferguson again. There is no House or Senate rule requiring pre-filing of draft bills in an extraordinary session. The letter is setting a de facto rule without getting the necessary 2/3 vote to change the legislative rules. Second, even if the legislature had adopted such a deadline of February 26th, the deadline is absurd. Extraordinary sessions, commonly referred to as special sessions, are called by the governor, and he sets the agenda. The governor issues a proclamation defining each issue that may be considered. His proclamation is called the call, and the issues to be considered are call items. Although the governor limits the subjects to be considered, the Constitution and legislative rules allow a legislator, without approval from anyone, to file his own bill if the bill is germane to one of the call items, without approval of anyone. They're trying to change that. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy, folks. You gotta. I just want you to understand what they are requesting is crazy. I was getting calls and texts from legislators all afternoon after we got off the air yesterday, and they were telling me, we are so glad that you covered that letter because it's made us all very angry. We're so glad. We've been steaming over this letter that Gillum and Dismang sent, identical letters to the governor. We've been steaming over this all weekend, and we're so glad that you covered what this is, this huge scam. They're trying to take the power away from our legislators. Now, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, conservative or progressive. Let the process play out. What are you so afraid of, Governor Hutchinson? What are they afraid of? Maybe this all has to do with controlling the language, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, the PBM issue, the pharmacist issue. Obviously, governor's not going to come out and say, tough luck, pharmacists. Have fun closing down your businesses. I hope you get a good price when CVS comes in and offers you a deal. Obviously, Asa's not going to say that. But what we can tell you today is that the big pharma CVS lobby is alive and well. Joe, let's go to this Twitter video, and we're going to want the audio from the other computer if you can do it. This little video decided to show up on the hashtag ARLeg feed the other day. You see this? It's already got 7,000 views according to Twitter. And it is from a Twitter handle called Affordable Pharmacy. And it's at Pharmacy Action. It's a political action group. And they decided to put this video out and drop it in the Arkansas Legislative Twitter feed, which is essentially arguing for the status quo, for PBMs, and actually demonizes local pharmacists, and is saying that if PBMs become regulated, it'll mean higher drug prices for everyone, and no one will be able to afford their drug plans. Now, notice what Ace has said, by the way, with Arkansas Works being involved. He says, well, the insurance companies say the PBMs are good because it keeps them below the caps that are on. They can't raise their prices or they can't raise their rates below the caps. You see how this is all kind of unraveling here? You know, the government does one thing that doesn't make any sense, and then it affects other places, and now you're not going to have them say, they're going to say it's not our fault. But listen, this is why Governor Hutchinson, in my opinion, speculation, wants to really control this language. He doesn't say specifically what he supports. He just says generally, yeah, regulations under the insurance department. But what does that mean? Is CVS going to be happy? If CVS is happy, you can rest assured that the pharmacists won't be, or the pharmacists will be right back in the same situation very, very soon. Depends on what the proposal is. Do we know what it is? Well, Asa says in order for him to call a special session, they got to get 2/3 votes. So he can make sure his agenda and his language gets passed with no debate, no amendments. This is this video. Take a listen to this.
I love this place. Small towns or small businesses like mine here. When somebody can't pay for the medical bills, you know about it. You also know about it when something's bothering people, like our community pharmacy. Now, I've known Tom, the owner, for years. We grew up together. Played football on the same team. The guy everyone looked up to. Good pharmacy, too. We know it's not all Tom's fault when drug prices go up. But when we heard about new regulations that force us to pay more for drugs, well, we thought Tom would be against them, like everybody else. He says he needs the money. But what about the rest of us? No one bails us out when times are tough. And those higher pharmacy costs, small businesses like mine, they end up paying them. I hope Tom remembers that. Because we sure will.
Oh, my gosh. You don't think the stakes at high? You don't think somebody's making a killing? Someone is making a ton of money off the status quo, man. I'm telling you. Oh, by the way, Tom's Pharmacy is going out of business. They don't mention that part. Oh, Tom, the evil pharmacist that's swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck. The average pharmacist makes $111,000 a year. Yeah, well, let this keep going, and that by the way, that's going to start plummeting, by the way. I'm telling you, the lobby is alive and well. We have just demonstrated there's clearly the CVS big business corporate arm is alive and well, and if you don't think the governor and these other folks are hearing from them, you're crazy. They are hearing from them. They want to know, what is Arkansas going to do? And that explains, I'm telling you, to me, that explains it. It also is going to insulate on other issues, because now, we have bills to get an up or down vote on whether or not to cap Medicaid expansion. Do they want to have that? Are they going to try to avoid going on record and voting for or against that? Yeah, you betcha. They don't want to go on record on that. Anyway, we have to take a commercial break. Give me a phone call, 870-275-9799. Sound off on Facebook, broadcasting live there, facebook.com/Conduit News. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We got a little update on the Senate special election in District 16. We have Bob Bailey signs that are being vandalized by Democrats, I guess. I don't know. Only reason I say Democrats is because they, we do know that Democrats are out admitting that they're trying to sabotage the Republican primary by voting for Breanne Davis because she is, quote, centrist, and Bob Bailey is, quote, a gun nut. That's what the Democrats are now publicly saying. And by the way, evidence of that on social media is mounting. I'm collecting that. People are sending me all kinds of stuff. But look at this. This is Bob Bailey for Senate up in Russellville. And we have somebody who's vandalized the sign with a black spray paint, and they have written across it, "Russians trumped you." Russians trumped you. Now, that's interesting. These photos started coming to me on Friday. Isn't that when Mueller came out with those 13 Russians that were indicted? But the Justice Department said Trump and Americans had nothing to do with it? And apparently it was just a bunch of internet trolls. Russians trumped you is what this, and this is, there's been more than one. This was a coordinated effort. And I'm told that the perpetrator has been caught and was caught in the act. But we'll wait and see. I don't know that for fact, but that's just what I heard that. But anyway, these are the stakes. We have people who are now vandalizing Bob Bailey for Senate signs. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We have one more hour coming your way next. Coming up next, we have the Independence County Republican Chairman, Mr. Charlie Fuqua. Back in just a moment.
Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It's brought to you by the great Patriots.
And the carry of a weapon with just a simple sign. What it boils down to.
Hey Tim. Hey, can you get to a better location, maybe where we get a better signal, or maybe kind of move around because we're kind of losing you right there. That'd be good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. This just confirms everything we've been saying all along. It's garbage. Remember, this was a campus carry bill when it started, and it got hijacked. And as soon as they passed it, they already had amendments to gut it.
Mm-hmm.
And this just confirms it. I mean, the 122, the 573, 122 restricted places, they said it would allow us to carry on if you had the enhanced. The AG just basically gutted that. If a library puts up a sign and says no weapons, guess what? It doesn't matter if you have it enhanced or not. If any restaurant, any private facility, any public facility, the things that they said, and we argued all along weren't true, we were right.
Wow. So that is something to behold here, because this was originally a very simple idea from Charlie Collins. And I know Charlie is still out there talking about how great this law is and what a great job he did. And it's because, quite frankly, loyalty to the governor and favor with him actually trumped what his original goal was. And that's just my opinion. But Charlie just wanted professors to be able to carry, if you already had your permission slip, which you don't need, but if you already had just a regular concealed handgun license, the first tier now, and you were a college professor, you'd be able to carry on campus. Very, very simple. The governor doesn't like that because he wanted, I guess more training, he said. He doesn't trust the professors with their guns. And then State Representative Bob Ballinger came along with a solution to have a special permit from the government, which I disagree with. And they went along with that idea. And now we have what we have, which we have the instructors who are all messed up. And I know they're trying to now, quote, even maybe fix it in the special session and that sort of thing. What do you guys know about that fix, by the way? Because they are talking about trying to fix something for instructors in the fiscal session.
Paul, go ahead, Felix.
Well, like I say, I have a copy here. So far, one of the things I think they're going to amend was, instead of calling it what was the term they used? I can't find my document here. Anyway, I have the draft copy of it so far. Of course, they're going to amend that. Change some of the wording a little bit as far as we know. One of the things they wanted to change was the way it was originally worded, as every instructor had to be able to teach the enhanced class. In other words, every instructor had to be enhanced trained themselves. Well, some instructors don't want to be enhanced trained. Well, the way it's worded, then unless they're enhanced trained, they can't teach at all. So if they can't teach, in other words, then we'll be losing all these instructors. And I know some instructors who says, like, I don't even think I could do it. Some of these gentlemen are older, and they can't do the move and sway and whatever is required of the class itself. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing they want to fix. They want to fix it where if you want to teach enhanced, you can. If you don't, then that's fine too.
Yeah, and that's just an example of how this whole thing, they didn't think any of the stuff they were doing through. The only thing that was primary was, what does the governor want? We don't want to put something on his desk where he's going to veto it and expose himself as not being for the Second Amendment. All of this was political contortion. Now, Tim Loggins, you respond to this supposed fix.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and call upon Representative Bob Ballinger and all of our elected officials that if you want to fix this, repeal it. Because what you've done is you've manufactured more confusion and you have legislated more infringements. You're not helping advance gun rights at all with this legislation. And I know that I'm right because they're still arguing about this bill 1 year after it passed. Even the legislators are arguing about what it means, how to implement it. It was a rush deal. It was not normal process. They didn't follow the normal rules. And if you want to fix it, repeal it. Start all over. Remember, this.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, it's hour number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Good morning to everyone out there. Okay, so welcome to the program. We've got a special guest on the phone. We've got Mr. Charles Fuqua is with us, and he is the chairman of the Independence County Republican Committee. Charles, welcome, sir.
I'm glad to be here today.
Absolutely. Now, your connection's just a little rough, so just make sure you get into a place in your house, and maybe we can. You want to speak clearly into the microphone or your phone as well. So, can you hear me? Okay, Charles.
I hear you just fine. Do you hear me any better now?
Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so I wanted to have you on. Tell us about the Trump Day dinner. You know, this is kind of interesting. You hear about Reagan Day dinners and Lincoln Day dinners. Tell us about the Trump Day dinner.
Well, we wanted to celebrate the fact that we had a president that loved America. After so long having a president that just apologizes for America and criticizes America, we're just really happy to have one that loves America and loves us. So we called our dinner the Trump Day dinner. And we are having a very special guest at that dinner. And I want to tell you how this all evolved. A candidate for governor, Jan Morgan, her campaign contacted me and asked if she could speak at one of our committee meetings. And our regular day for our committee meeting is the first Tuesday of the month, which is the 6th of March is our regular committee meeting. So I invited her. And we were just going to have her speak at the committee meeting. But when I announced to the committee that we were going to do that, people said, hey, if she's coming, we ought to make this a big deal. And it has become a big deal. We're going to have a dinner. It's going to be at the fairgrounds. And my hope was to maybe get 60 people there. And we've already sold 75 tickets, and there's a whole lot outstanding, so I imagine we'll probably sell a whole lot more than that. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm about her coming to our county.
Yeah. I mean, Charles, this is a pattern. I mean, and that I have noticed kind of everywhere she goes, there is big turnouts. I mean, when I was up here, she was just up here at just a Tea Party event speaking, and they had a packed house. And I've been going to events like this for a long time, and I've never seen so many people show up, you know, new faces and everything. So she is generating a lot of interest. So it's not surprising. As you said, you wanted 50 people to show up. You've already sold 70 tickets to this thing. Now, it is March the 6th. Is that correct?
It is, and I want to say something about it. To get in, you've got to have advance tickets because this is a dinner, and we've got to know how many dinners to have there. So if people want to come, by the way, it's going to be in a very large building at our fairground. We can probably hold 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't think there's any way we'll have that many. But anybody that wants to come, we can accommodate them, but they must have advance tickets. They can contact me at 870-612-3570. And I'm going to give that again. It's 870-612-3570.
Okay,
They
yeah.
can call me, and I can get tickets to them. They're $20 a ticket, and for children under 12, it's half price, $10 a ticket.
Nice. Well, I'm excited for you guys. It's going to be a good a good time, and I'm glad we could talk about it. I thought it was interesting, a Trump Day dinner. And, of course, you know, keynote speaker Jan Morgan. Now, Charles, let me ask you this. And, yeah, I feel free. I know this may be kind of a difficult question because you are, you know, chairman, Independence County Republican chairman. But we have documented evidence that when, for example, Jan Morgan was supposed to go speak at the Mississippi County Republican Lincoln Reagan Day dinner. There was an email sent from one of the governor's employees, Douglas Smith, and he was putting pressure on that committee to disinvite Jan and not allow her to speak, which this happened in a lot of places, which eventually the county chairman got together and they passed a resolution saying we're independent organizations and we're going to have whoever we want to have speak because it's healthy for the Republican Party to promote, difference, a lot of different ideas and debate is a good thing. So, Charles, my question is, have you gotten any pushback? Because it sounds to me like if this went from 50 to 70 and now it's even more, I just have a feeling that maybe some people have noticed, if you know what I mean.
Okay, well, first of all, let me say this. I've written a book, and just the name of the book is God's Law, the Only Political Solution, and I go all over the state speaking at Tea Party meetings and at Republican committee meetings and present what's the contents of my book or just an overview of it. So I have gotten to know people all over the state and collected emails. And in Independence County, I have an email list of about 300 people I send emails to. And across the state, an additional about 500 that I send emails to. So when we decided to do this, I sent emails out to both those email lists telling them about the event. And not very long after I did that, I got a text message from Doug Smith, and he asked, are you guys having some kind of an event in Independence County? Obviously, somebody passed that email on to him. I don't know. He may actually be on my email list. But anyway, that was what he asked. And I sent him a text back, and I said, well, yes, we are having a Trump Day dinner at the fairgrounds, and our keynote speaker is going to be Jan Morgan. And pretty soon I got another text message back from him, and he said, has our sitting governor been invited? And so I sent a text back to him, and I said, well, actually, we didn't invite Jan Morgan. She asked if she could speak at the committee meeting, and we said yes. And then this thing just kind of exploded on us. And I think I may even, I did tell him that we have invited the governor to our county, and he's never shown up. So not that he hasn't been in the county, because he has.
Right.
But he's just never been at anything that the Republican committee invited him to.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you're telling me that Doug Smith reached out to you as soon as he found out this event was taking place. Wow. Well, I mean, you got to give him a good score for persistence. I mean, this guy is, he is on the taxpayer payroll. He works for the governor's office. And so it'd be interesting that our taxpayer dollars are going to, I don't know, going to him. And I guess he's focused on getting Asa reelected. That's what it seems like to me.
I can't answer that.
Oh, well, I understand you can't, but that's I'm just saying that's what it seems like to me. So, well, that's a fascinating. So, talk a little bit about, just real quick. We're talking with Charles Fuqua, the chairman of the Independence County Republicans. How's the Republican Party doing in the state? How do you see it? Is it divided?
Oh, I think it's extremely divided. And I think the reason it's divided is many Republicans do not like Obamacare. They're opposed to it because Republicans, as a general rule, are opposed to socialism. And Obamacare is socialism. And since the Republican leadership in the state of Arkansas has been pushing our little special version of Obamacare, it's divided the party.
And so you think that's the divide? Yeah. So why do some Republicans seem? I'm glad you brought up socialism. I asked this question a bunch last week. Why do some Republicans fight tooth and nail to keep a socialist program from a socialist president?
Well, here's what I think's going on, and I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm just saying what I think I see happening. in the state of Arkansas, for many years, we were told that the Republican Party was for the rich and the Democratic Party was for the working guy. But in reality, what we had was the Democrat Party, since it was the party in power, was owned by the lobbyists, and they did whatever the lobbyists wanted them to do. And then the lobbyists fought their election campaigns, and they just kept getting elected over and over again. Well, we had hoped that when we put Republicans in power that things would change, but it's looking more and more like that hasn't changed. And the way, this is just what I see. I think I am seeing the largest transfer of wealth in Arkansas history from taxpayers to a particular special interest group, and that would be the health insurance companies and the hospitals. And whatever you want to call it, Obamacare, how many names has it had? ACARE, the private option, Arkansas Works. Am I missing some of them?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I'm sure there's some in the future when people figure out whatever it's called now is still Obamacare. I'm sure they'll rename it again.
Yeah, but anyway, whatever you want to call it, okay? It is making the hospitals and the insurance companies very rich, and then in turn, they can contribute to the election campaigns of the politicians that support that system. So what we've got is the same old thing we had with the Democrats in charge. The Republicans are supporting the people that will contribute to their campaign in a big way. And that's what I was in the Arkansas legislature, and at the time I was in the House of Representatives, there were only 13 Republicans. Now, back in those days, we stood for something. We didn't have any power, but we did everything we could to try and be real conservative. Now it seems like what we stand for is getting enough lobbyists to support us to get reelected.
Wow, that's really. I appreciate that perspective. You being in the state house. You said 13 of you out of 100, and yeah, that's exactly right. I mentioned earlier 138 years of Democrat control, and so that is kind of what it was. There was. I mean, every now and then, I guess you'd have a Democrat primary, but for the most part, everybody stayed in office, and you just did what the Marble Palace monolith wanted you to do, big business or whatever, and everything was fine. And so, but then Obama gets elected, people start realizing that, hey, the Democrat Party is actually advocating not only just for social policies that are terrible like abortion, but I mean, they're now so far to the left, they believe we should all be forced to give up all of our money, put it into one big pot, and divide it up equally. I mean, that's the movement. I mean, it's straight up socialism. And so people started making different decisions. I think they started voting on issues, and they realized that the issues that they were important to them were important to the Republican Party because of the Republican Party platform. And yet we haven't had the reform that people have been asking for, and you're saying instead they've just gone down there and they're doing what the lobbyists want, and it's the same old. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying, and I mean it's very simple, but I've never thought about it in specifically those terms.
I want to say one other thing, and this is I think I'm speaking for our committee, and at least the people that are outspoken and tell me what they think. Another thing that our committee is very upset about is we really liked having term limits on our legislators. We thought that was a good idea. Well, when the Republicans took over the legislature, they put a ballot issue on for the people to vote on that they called ethics reform. And the ethics reform was to do away with the term limits the people had established.
Yes.
So they basically snookered us, because I don't know if you know this, but if something goes on the ballot title has to be approved by the Attorney General. And the Attorney General has been very diligent about rejecting misleading ballot titles. However, if the ballot title and the initiative comes from the legislature, the Attorney General does not have the authority to change that ballot title because it's assumed that the legislature wouldn't put a misleading ballot.
Right. Yeah, because somehow when you become a legislator, you become an angel. You become infallible.
Yeah.
You can't do anything wrong. And, of course, we have John Woods, Mike and Neal, Jake Files, Michael Lamoureux, and the lot to prove that to be true. So, Charles.
Well, I want to give a word of caution here. If you're going to the polls and there's something that we're voting on, especially if it changes the Arkansas Constitution, be very skeptical of voting for it, because the legislature is prone to give us misleading ballot types.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was that was a whole John Woods thing, by the way. John Woods was the one responsible for that particular issue that changed and extended term limits and gave them the ability to raise their salaries. And it was you talk about misleading. It wasn't misleading. It was the ballot title versus what was in the text. It was meant to trick the voters. It was in my opinion, it should have been criminal. What John Woods and the legislature did to the people, putting that language, should have been a criminal act, in my opinion.
I don't believe, had the Attorney General scrutinized that, it could have ever passed Attorney General scrutiny. That ballot.
Yeah, no question. No question. Yeah. Well, Charles Fuqua, I appreciate you coming on the program. Go ahead one more time. Trump Day dinner coming up. What's the date, and where can people get tickets?
It is March 6th. It will be at the Independence County Fairgrounds. You can get tickets from me at 870-612-3570. And the tickets are $20 each, $10 for children under 12. And we'd love to have a big crowd there.
All righty. We appreciate it, sir. Best of luck to you, Charles. And it's always great to have you on the program.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
All righty. Folks, good morning to you. We got to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
First Community Bank is now the go-to for Jingle.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. All right, here we go. We have coming up at 7:33, we're going to be talking with Russellville pharmacist Mr. Michael Smith about the PBMs. It'd be interesting to get his comments about what Asa said, or but what's being reported about what Asa said yesterday in his press conference. Now, we dissected that press conference for you in the last hour, so if you haven't gotten that, you can check out the podcast. But essentially, what I took from it was an admission that Asa Hutchinson is doing everything he can to not look bad in the media. I mean, he admitted that. Governor, why do 2/3 have to sign on before you'll call a special session? He said, well, because we don't want to go into a special session with a 51 vote majority and then have someone change their mind. Kind of like James Sturch changed his mind and walked out of the chamber, the Sturch lurch. We don't want somebody to change their mind. And then he said this. He said, and then you'll be asking me, why didn't you get what you wanted to get done in the special session? So he clearly wants to, and listen, I can't help but think, and I know this may be just a little too, maybe this is a little far, maybe this is a stretch, but Joe, was it last week or 2 weeks ago that I was reminiscing about the reports out of Tennessee a few years ago where Governor Bill Haslam, a Republican, called a special session of the Tennessee legislature because he wanted to expand Medicaid. And this was back in 2015, I think. And the governor's plan failed, didn't even get out of committee, and the special session was over. And I just said 2 weeks ago, I was like, can you imagine that happening here? I mean, it's got to be Asa Hutchinson's worst nightmare. His worst nightmare. But, and I think partially maybe that's what this is trying to avoid. Now, is that is his little scheme or idea in direct, a direct result of the segment that I did? I mean, it's possible. I mean, good grief. We do a segment on this program, and then it gets specifically rebutted in a committee meeting 3 hours later. We've already seen that happen because people are, driving into the Marble Palace, and establishment folks, they hear what we say, and they're like, oh, that's not right because I am a conservative, and he's saying that what I voted for isn't conservative, and so then they'll go into the committee, and they'll try to clear things up. They'll try to clear things up, and, I don't know, maybe they're just, it's like, it's kind of like self-recited positive reinforcement. It's like, I am good enough. I am smart enough. Doggone it, people like me. Unless you're Al Franken, you're probably Al Franken, essentially a victim of the Me Too movement. Anyway, phone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If Roy Moore would have won in Alabama, I think Al Franken would have stayed in. I think he'd have said, I'm not going to resign now. Republicans have no standards. We have no standards. That's what he would have said anyway. Yeah, okay. So, real quick. Can we take a look at this sign again? Oh, can we also talk real quick? I'm so sorry, but did you hear that Doug Smith called about this Trump Day dinner thing? Did you hear Charles Fuqua say that? Charles Fuqua said that Doug Smith called him once the event got big. Event gets, a lot of people interested. It goes out an email. People are like, yeah, Trump Day dinner. Yeah, Jan Morgan's coming to speak. Can is that not interesting? Doug Smith, man. I mean, this guy has the governor's back, and he's getting taxpayer money to do it. Have you invited our sitting governor? Well, yes, actually, we have. We've invited him to our committee many times, but he doesn't go. You see, the thing about the Independence County Republican Committee is they are, they're, as far as a conservative, they're savage. They're straight up savage in terms of limited government conservatism. They are really, really on point. I think maybe, Yeah, it's just like, you got an allergy. If you're a progressive liberal, you're going to have an allergy to true conservatism or limited government, freedom, live and let live, that kind of thing. You're pro free market, but you're not pro CVS, pro Monsanto, pro corporate dental. You're pro free market. Anyway, we got to take a break.
Which camp is carried? We've gotten so far away from the intent of the bill, it's not even funny. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, it really is. So let's get back to this AG opinion real quick. Leslie Rutledge coming out, saying, hey, look, putting her saying even if you do have the enhanced carry, you're not what does it say specifically that you're not going to be able to use this enhanced permit at public places that serve alcohol, Felix? And what does public really mean?
Well, that's the thing, exactly. Now, we use the term public in some of the documents to describe a government-owned entity, as in a restriction in government buildings. They call those public buildings, public parking lots. So in that case, public means a government building. Well, if there's a government building that's serving alcohol, well, if you have the regular permit, you can't even go into the building, period. So it don't matter whether they're serving alcohol or not. Now, the enhanced permit increased the chances that you can go into a government facility. However, if the people that are in charge there decide they don't want you in there because they're serving alcohol, can just simply put up a sign and keep you from going in there, simply because of the alcohol sales alone.
I'm trying to figure
out. But this goes back to the whole. This goes back to the whole thing of how people look at alcohol and firearms don't mix, which most sane person would agree with that. However, the thought process is if you're drinking, you must be drinking to inebriation, so you shouldn't have a gun, which is kind of far-fetched.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that as well. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out this scenario. Nothing is ever what it seems, and so I mean, I know the letter was from Bill Sample. I guess he had concerns about this. Is that what it was? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what specific scenario are they that is probably entirely hypothetical. Are they trying to prevent from happening?
Well, I would love to be able to pick his ear and see what he meant, but I'm assuming they're looking to try to keep alcohol and firearms separate somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm. So anyway,
I'm gonna go further, Paul.
Okay.
Even college students that have their enhanced got to have their weapon within arm's reach at all times. So what it means is if you're a college student, you're over 21, you have your enhanced carry, you really can't have your weapon in the dorm room. Mm-hmm. So for every privilege that the enhanced grant, they wrote in an exception. And I think all they're doing with this is just furthering those exceptions.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Good morning to everybody out there. Feel free. Our phone number to call or text, 870-275-9799. You can also leave a voicemail, or you can sound off at facebook.com/Conduit News. You can also watch us as well at conduitnews.com or our YouTube channel, Conduit News. We make it pretty easy for you. Hey, welcome to the program. We have Mr. Michael Smith with us. Michael is a pharmacist. Michael lives in Russellville. Michael, welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you could be with us. Hey, so how long have you been a pharmacist?
I've been a pharmacist for almost 41 years.
Wow. And have you been in Russellville that entire time?
This is my 40th year in Russellville. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've owned my store for nearly 37 years.
Wow. Well, I wanted to have you on because I know definitely you're following this whole PBM situation with local pharmacists. We've got reports of pharmacists all across the state who are really hurting because of the current status quo. They also, some of them are getting notices from CVS, Caremark, offering to buy their business or something, or they'll come out and give them an estimate of how much it's worth. What can you tell us? I mean, what's the reality for the local pharmacist right now on the ground concerning these reimbursement rates? You get one price for one prescription at a local pharmacy, and it can be outrageously different at, say, CVS. What can you tell us about this, Michael?
Yes, unfortunately, it is going on. As I talk to customers and make it known what is going on behind the scenes, and they're appalled. And they ask me, how can this be? And it's to the detriment of the whole industry. It's amazing that it's gotten this bad this fast. And I think we have to go back and look at where these pharmacy benefit managers actually came from in the first place. They actually started processing manufacturers' discount coupons where the physician would give the patient a prescription. They would take that brand name prescription to be filled and take that coupon where they would actually process it through a little black box that we were given by these companies back in the 80s. And we would process that coupon off of their price of their medicine. And that's where they got started, pharmacy benefit managers. And then they got into where that they could actually verify the eligibility of the patient, and then they could process the claim for us. And from there, they decided that they could get rebates back from these drugs themselves, and therein started the problem as it evolved over time, these larger and larger rebates. So the higher the price, the more rebates they got back from these manufacturers' coupons and so on. So that's where we began, and that's sort of where we are at right now.
So let me ask you this. Why are these contracts non-negotiable? Well, how does that work?
Yes, so they're a take it or leave it. They're written by the PBMs, and we can take it or leave it. We can take whatever they give us. At one time back in the 80s, they actually were very pharmacist friendly, and they wanted to create their own networks, and they worked with us, gave us reasonable rates, reasonable dispensing fees for our drug, and actually paid us for the price of the drug. But over time, they began to build their own drugstores, and as their retail market increased, they decided we've got stores that we can funnel all of this business to, so we'll pay other pharmacists less and less, and so we're going to drive out competition, very anti-competitive and very monopolistic, drive prescriptions from your local pharmacy to their own individual stores that they own.
So can you address, we're talking with Michael Smith, the Russellville pharmacist, or a Russellville pharmacist. Can you address how does this all work with Blue Cross Blue Shield? I mean, because the way it's been kind of described to me is, I mean, these guys are, it looks to me like getting rich. You have the corporate interests really making out well here, but while you guys are not doing so hot.
Yes, like Brandon Cooper was telling yesterday, they've entered into agreements with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they hired Caremark as their prescription or the pharmacy benefit manager. And so they've got these rebates that are coming back and forth. So they're actually rebating back to Caremark as well as to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So in other words, the higher the rebates, the more that Blue Cross Blue Shield and Caremark benefit from these benefits. And I might say that Caremark is the nation's largest drugstore chain. Mm-hmm. Last year they had revenues of $177 billion, and they had their number 7 on the Fortune 500 corporations.
Yeah, on our Facebook feed right now, Steve has just written that the Caremark CEO made $18 million last year. So, I mean, they're doing pretty well for themselves.
Yes, they are. Very much. So
okay, so
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that money that's going on. Yes.
Well, Brandon, you mentioned your colleague Brandon. He also talked about how the reason this is like now kind of even a bigger issue is because with these Arkansas Works plans, Medicaid expansion plans, they take taxpayer money and pay Blue Cross Blue Shield for the insurance policy. So now your taxpayer dollars are going to participate in Blue Cross insurance policies, and then they have contracted with Caremark. So it really is your taxpayer dollars are now working against your business as a local pharmacist.
Exactly. They're underpaying us. Obviously, we're getting negatively reimbursed. Very little to no fees are given to us. But if you take that same prescription, as Brandon said, to their pharmacy, then you see that there's a big difference. I've even got a patient who is actually a employee of mine, and she has Ambetter. And we filled the prescription at my location, and I saw that I was reimbursed a total of 61 cents. But when she looked on her profile of what was paid on that prescription, Caremark said that they were actually charging Blue Cross Blue Shield $3.68. That's a small example. I have another employee that also has Ambetter, and they were reimbursed $12 at my pharmacy, right at cost. But that same prescription at the CVS, they were reporting at $140 was actually paid to us.
Wow.
through Caremark. So there's a big gap, big spread there.
Yeah,
and they charge clients for more drugs than they actually pay the pharmacy.
Yeah, the fix is certainly in. I mean, it really just, the whole thing sounds like a scam, you know, and it doesn't sound like, you know, people are actually just allowed to I mean, there can be no competition when there's this stuff going on. And my fear is that, you know, if CVS keeps going, you know, they're going to corner the market. They're going to buy these pharmacies out, run everybody else out of business, and then they'll be able to do what they want to with the prices.
Exactly. I mean, I get a lot of comments from patients too that we want patient choice. We want to be able to shop with you, and they're receiving these mailers that you need to go shop at our own individual pharmacy, our CVS pharmacy, and they're driving customers away from us to their pharmacy. It's very anti-competitive and lack of choice. And you said the consumer is going to lose and the taxpayers lose.
Mm-hmm. We're talking again with Michael Smith. He's a pharmacist from Russellville. Now, Michael, there's a big election up there. I mean, runoff on March the 13th between Breanne Davis and between Bob Bailey. Now,
yes,
I understand that you're supporting Bob Bailey. Do you mind sharing with our audience as to why?
Yes, I've known Bob for many years, a man of high integrity, very honest. His wife is actually has been a long-time teacher. I believe she recently retired in the Russellville public school system. Their sons went to school with my sons, so we've had a good working relationship, very good working relationship, and a super swell guy. I supported him when he first started to run. He'd been talking about it, and I was very encouraged that he did make the decision, and I supported him then. And that was back in December. And since January 1, the PBM issue has sprang up out of all of this.
Okay, so and the PBM issue is actually, I mean, you can directly chart if you look at funding. Bob's opponent, Breanne Davis, receives money from DBH Consulting Political Action Committees. We were detailing this yesterday. And, of course, that goes directly to the DBH Consulting, Michael Lamoureux, and their client is CVS. It's public knowledge. It's available on the websites. And so I'm sure it is a big deal because if you're kind of taking money from what is essentially big pharma, then you know that you might be a little bit slow to try to fix some of this stuff that's going on with pharmacists.
Exactly. I'm extremely happy that Bob has not taken that PBM lobbyist money. Obviously, they have a lot of profit that they can spend on lobbyists. Bob has not taken that money, and I applaud him for that, and I've told his campaign directly that I very appreciate it. And I made them aware of this conversation you and I are having right now of what is going on behind the scenes, behind the RX curtain.
Mm-hmm.
To explain. People have not always known what's going on behind, but they're beginning to get an education now.
So what do you think? Yesterday the governor had a press conference, and they're saying that they want to try to address that. Now, I'm very cautious. I said in my first hour, hey, all you pharmacists need to be very cautious because just because they say we're going to try to address this, there's all these stipulations. And so far, the stipulations are, well, we don't want the legislators to be able to legislate, have up or down votes on amendments. We want them to agree to the language before we call a special session. That seems to be attempting to control the outcome before our representative democracy can actually be allowed to work. But just that's my caution. But, Michael, if you heard what the governor said, I mean, are you happy with this? Are you optimistic about this? What are your thoughts?
I'm very cautious like you because pharmacists are asking for transparency to shed the light on actually what is happening behind this curtain. And we're wanting accountability. That's exactly the two things that we want, transparency and accountability with the government. I don't believe in over-regulating. However, in this case, we've got a system that is broken. The model is broken. It's not doing well. The current pharmacy, PBM, and insurance carrier marketplace is kaput. It's broken. There's a conflict of self-interest, of self-billing to the detriment of competition, patient choice, and patient care. I believe that a pharmacist cannot provide excellent patient care and innovate when they're simply trying to survive this broken marketplace. The expertise and the oversight, which we've gone to school for so many years, 8 years or more, as with this enforcement needed, we need guardrails to help the market rebound so we can take care of our customers. and so that we don't get crunched down or that we're eliminated from the market.
When you say transparency, what do you mean? Do you mean you want the public to be able to see some of these contracts where you have these, where Blue Cross Blue Shield and I mean, what do you mean by transparency?
I want not only the consumer to know what's going on, but I want the Arkansas Insurance Commission to know and have examination of what is going on, if they can see behind it. I realize the PBMs say that it's proprietary and we should not be able to see it, but it's their rebate dollars that are being siphoned off, that are being kept. And they need to see where the money is actually going. How much money is it that needs to go back into the system? There are certain smaller PBMs who are transparent and which supply these rebates back into the system. I think Arkansas Medicaid is a good system of that transparency and applying rebates and getting the safety and efficacy of the drugs rather than going after the price only because of rebates, then actually safety and efficacy of the drug, what is very effective for that patient.
The governor was asked in his press conference yesterday, wouldn't it just be cheaper? Wouldn't this all be worked out if they hadn't done the private Arkansas Works option where they take taxpayer dollars and give it to Blue Cross Blue Shield? If we would have just done regular Medicaid expansion, and he said no, Medicaid expansion would have been more expensive for the pharmacists or regular, traditional Medicaid. Is that true? Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that. In fact, in Kentucky, they have just fired their PBM, and they're doing it themselves. A lot of times what's happening, employers don't realize the intricacies, and they're not secure in their knowledge. They haven't built up a base of knowledge of how to secure these rebates and how the marketplace works. A lot of employers now are looking back and seeing behind the curtain as what is going on with the PBMs. How come they're taking up so much money? I think employers need to educate themselves. They've outsourced it so much to the PBMs and let the PBMs handle this behind the scenes that they're giving up so much money that the healthcare cost across America is going up rather than going down. PBMs add and bloat the amount of dollars and expenditures that are spent on medicine.
Wow. There are so many layers between the patient and the healthcare. Whether it's the insurance companies and the government, between patients and the doctor, and now what we're exposing here is even for the pharmacist, even for the person that's trying to give us the medicine that we need. Look at all of the middlemen and look at what they're doing, and it's something. I'm glad that we're able to bring attention to all this, and I'm really glad, Michael Smith. You're somebody you are setting the record straight. This is somebody, folks, who is a pharmacist, who is there in the industry, and really there's nobody that is going to know their industry better, than somebody who's actually participating in it. So you're on the ground, you're in it, and I really appreciate you coming on the program and sharing your wisdom with us today.
I appreciate you, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity.
All righty, let's stay in touch. Let me know what I can do. Michael Smith, everybody, from he's a Russellville pharmacist. We do appreciate him. Also a Bob Bailey supporter. And you are hearing this. This is what you're hearing from pharmacists is, look, if we would have just done traditional Medicaid expansion, which I would have been against as well, but as far as the cost goes, there's no way you can no longer make the argument that traditional Medicaid expansion is cheaper than what the Republicans did with Arkansas Works, private option, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. Because we are paying $580 a month per person, regardless if they go to the doctor or not or need the care. With Medicaid, you only pay if you go to the doctor. You only pay if there's a service provided. And so anyway, it's a very, very interesting situation, and just be very skeptical, pharmacists. As I'm telling you, I have done this for a long time on a lot of different issues, and what I'm seeing is ASA is giving lip service. He says he wants to help the pharmacists. He says he wants PBMs to be regulated, but how so? He did say these contracts are commercial contracts. Well, Michael just said, look, we want this to be available to the public. We want to see what they're actually doing. So that's the rub. From what we heard at 6 o'clock in that press conference when we were going over it, I'm not really sure that the governor is going to support the level of transparency that the pharmacists are wanting right now. I can promise you that CVS doesn't want that transparency because they're dropping political action ads in the Twitter feed where they're making the pharmacist out to be the enemy. We covered that in the first hour as well. Check that out. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I would like to do a flashback to February of 2016 in Pine Bluff. And I'll tell you what that means next.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yeah, so the state, essentially the state of Arkansas, from my view, is up to the highest bidder, up to the highest corporate big business. I mean, that's what it just appears to me. I think it's abundantly clear. And what you're seeing with this PBM stuff is really telegraphing what ASA tried to get done a couple of years ago with Centene and managed care. And I've always said I'd love to have the debate about the managed care thing. But here, folks, I don't trust any of these people. That trust has not been earned at this point. Hey, do you guys know in 2016 Hillary Clinton came to Arkansas once, and in 2015 she came to Arkansas another time? We've covered the 2015 visit, but do you know what she said in 2016? She said this. Joe, go ahead, sir.
Ask yourself, what are they going to replace it with? And I have to tell you, I'm proud of Arkansas. I'm really proud of Arkansas because both Mike Beebe, the prior Democratic governor, now Asa Hutchinson, the current Republican governor, have been among the most creative leaders in the country
to
figure out how to expand Medicaid. in Arkansas.
Figure out
to
how.
take care of, more than 100,000 people last time I checked. And you know what that's meant? That's meant not only that people got health care, it's also meant that rural hospitals have stayed open that are closing in states that refuse to extend Medicaid.
Hospital math.
And I know it's a favorite issue on the Republican right, and I know how hard it is to try to do something as important as extending Medicaid. But I'm proud of Arkansas, and I go around bragging on this state because this was bipartisan. The Republican legislature had to approve it, and I am really supportive of what Governor Hutchinson is trying to do to make sure it stays here in Arkansas to take care of people and provide health care.
Hillary Clinton, ladies and gentlemen, on Asa Hutchinson. What a great endorsement. What a great endorsement. Oh, my gosh. Hillary Clinton is supportive of Asa Hutchinson and what he's trying to do to make sure Medicaid expansion stays here. Oh, wow. Isn't that fantastic, everyone? I mean, this is great endorsement there. Yay. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to go over like a lead balloon. You know what? Go ahead, though. You establishment Republicans, you Asa loyalists, you guys just go ahead and just keep making – go ahead and excuse this. Just keep making excuses for what you've done and what you continue to support. And just – I don't know. You guys are – you know what? Hillary Clinton just must have been a conservative all along, right? Hillary Clinton just must have been such just a closet conservative. And because you guys claim to be great conservatives, and yet here – is Hillary praising Asa for doing exactly what Asa is continuing to do. And, by the way, Asa is supporting people that continue to support his agenda, and Asa is finding primary opponents for people that oppose his Obamacare Medicaid expansion agenda. So, and Hillary Clinton is a fan of Asa's when it comes to this policy. He says there's some of the most creative. He's one of the most creative governors in the nation for doing what he's doing. Oh, my goodness. Good old boy system. Joe, did you listen to Fergie sing the national anthem?
Okay, so I heard this on the way back home from the show yesterday. I just flipping through the radio stations, just finding something to listen to, and this was on, and the person on the radio was like, does Fergie deserve an award for this or deserve something else? And I was like, this is awful.
I mean, it was I watched it, and there's another video angle where this was at the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah.
And everybody was laughing at her.
Yeah, there's another video circulating around.
It was so bad.
Where while she's singing, the camera is panning over to all of the different players at the NBA All-Star game, and a lot of them are smiling and because it's funny.
She sang
so
here it is. This is my take on it. Fergie sang the national anthem like Marilyn Monroe sang, Happy birthday, Mr. President. That's how she sang, oh, say.
It was worse, though.
I'm doing a little, but it was terrible. Oh, my gosh, it was the most cringeworthy thing I've seen in a long time.
Whoever decided to get her to do this probably listened to a Black Eyed Peas album. It was like, man, Fergie sounds real good. It's like, you guys don't realize how much autotune goes into that album.
Yeah, man, it was great. And the funniest thing, Fergie thought her performance was amazing. She was like, "Oh, this is dope." And when she got done with it, this is a dope performance. And yet it's like, oh man, everybody was just, and it lasted forever. I mean, she was singing it so slow. Anyway, check it out if you wanna cringe, folks. That's all the time we have for today. We'll see you tomorrow.